For warming up, let us pay attention to the following sentences. The sentences are all correct. The words in blue are all pronouns. Now, the question is, what nouns do they refer to? The first three pronouns refers to the word man, while the second three pronouns refer to computer. If we focus on the relationship between the noun and the pronouns, we could conclude that human pronoun and non-human pronoun will need different pronoun, such as who to refer to human noun and which to refer to non-human noun. Now, let us continue to adjective clause pronouns used as the subject. Before we continue further, let us discuss what clause is. A clause is a structure that has a subject and a verb. There are two kinds of clauses, independent and dependent. In example A, I thank the woman is also called an independent clause. An independent clause is a complete sentence and can stand alone. The adjective clause, who helped me, is a dependent clause. A dependent clause is not a complete sentence and cannot stand alone. A dependent clause must be connected to an independent clause. In A, I thank the woman is a main clause, and who helped me is an adjective clause. An adjective clause modifies a noun. In A, the adjective clause modifies woman. In A, who is the subject of the adjective clause. In B, that is the subject of the adjective clause. A and B have the same meaning, while C and D also have the same meaning. Who is used for people, which is used for things. That is used for both people and things. An adjective clause closely follows the noun it modifies. As in E, the adjective clause that is on the table closely follows the noun it modifies, the book. While in F, it is incorrect because the adjective clause doesn't closely follow the book. Now, we'll combine these two sentences and we'll use the second sentence as the adjective clause. He refers to the man, so he is a human subject, so we'll change he into who or that. The sentence will be, I saw the man who closed the door, or I saw the man that closed the door. Now let us continue to another example. I'm using a sentence. It contains an adjective clause. It refers to a sentence, and it is not a human subject. So we'll use which or that. The sentence will be, I'm using a sentence which contains an adjective clause, or I'm using a sentence that contains an adjective clause. It is important to remember that the verbs in the adjective clause have to agree with the noun to which the pronoun in adjective clause refers to. The next point is adjective clause pronouns used as the object of a verb. In A, who is usually used instead of whom, especially in speaking. Whom is generally used only in very formal English. In C and F, an object pronoun is often omitted from an adjective clause. A subject pronoun, however, may not be omitted. In adjective clause pronouns used as the object of a verb, who or whom is used for people, while which is used for things. That is used for both people and things. In this example, the pronoun him must be removed. It is unnecessary because who or whom or that or without whom or that function as the object of the verb saw. Let us see the following example. It refers to the book, and it is the object of the verb read. The sentence will be, the book which I read was good. The book that I read was good. The book I read was good. Now let us move on to adjective clause pronouns used as the object of preposition. In very formal English, the preposition comes at the beginning of the adjective clause, as in A and E. Usually, however, in everyday usage, the preposition comes after the subject and verb of the adjective clause, as in the other examples. If the preposition comes at the beginning of the adjective clause, only whom or which may be used. A preposition is never followed immediately by that or who. Now let us pay attention to the following two examples. Number 1 is wrong because you cannot use who in this case. You have to change who into whom. So the sentence will be, she is the woman about whom I told you. Number 2 is also wrong. We cannot use that in this sentence. We have to change that into which. So the sentence will be, the music to which we listened last night was good. Now let's see these two sentences. We'll change the second one into adjective clause. Her refer to the woman, and her is the object of preposition to. In a very formal language, the sentence will be, the woman to whom Abdullah spoke gave me a good advice. In informal language, the sentence will be, the woman who Abdullah spoke to gave me a good advice. Or, the woman that Abdullah spoke to gave me a good advice. Or, the woman Abdullah spoke to gave me a good advice. Now this is about using whose. Whose is used to show possession. It carries the same meaning as other possessive pronouns used as adjectives: his, her, its, and their. Like his, her, its, and their, whose is connected to a noun, like in his bicycle or whose bicycle. Her composition or whose composition. Both whose and the noun it is connected to are placed at the beginning of the adjective clause. Whose cannot be omitted. Whose usually modifies people, but it may also be used to modify things, as in see. Whose and whose have the same pronunciation. Whose can mean who is, as in E, or who has, as in F. When has is a helping verb in the present perfect, it is usually contracted with who in speaking, and sometimes in informal writing, as in F. When has is a main verb, it is not contracted with who, as in example, I know a man who has a cook. Now let us pay attention to the following sentences. We'll combine the sentences and use the second sentence as the adjective clause. There and the second sentence refer to the people in the first sentence. So the combined sentence will be, the people whose house we visited were nice. As in other form of adjective clause, we have to make sure that the adjective clause pronoun directly follow the noun it refers to. Now, we'll discuss about using where in adjective clause. Where is used in an adjective clause to modify a place, such as city, country, room, house, and so on. If where is used, a preposition is not included in the adjective clause, as in A. If where is not used, the preposition must be included, as in B. Now let us pay attention to the following two sentences. We'll combine the sentences using the second sentence as the adjective clause. There, in the second sentence, refer to the office in the first sentence. The combined sentence would vary, just like in number 1. The office where I work is busy. In the second one, we use in which. So the sentence will be, the office in which I work is busy. For number 3, we put the preposition after the verb of the main clause. So the sentence will be, the office which I work in is busy, or the office that I work in is busy, or the office I work in is busy. Now we'll continue to the topic of using when in adjective clause. When is used in an adjective clause to modify a noun of time, such as year, day, time, century, and so on. The use of a preposition in an adjective clause that modifies a noun of time is somewhat different from that in other adjective clauses. A preposition is used preceding which, as in be. Otherwise, the preposition is omitted. Now let's see these two sentences. Monday is the day. She will come on that day. On that day has the same meaning as Monday. In example 1, we use when. So the sentence will be, Monday is when she will come. In the second one, we use on which. So the sentence will be, Monday is the day on which she will come. In the third example, we use that. So the sentence will be, Monday is the day that she will come. On the fourth example, we don't use when, on which, or that. So the sentence will be, Monday is the day she will come. Now we'll discuss about using adjective clause to modify pronouns. Adjective clauses can modify indefinite pronouns such as someone, everything, anybody, etc. Object pronouns, for example, who, whom, that, which, are usually omitted in the adjective clause as in A and B. Adjective clauses can modify the one or the ones and those. Adjective clauses are almost never used to modify personal pronouns. Native English speakers would not write the sentence in F. Example G is possible, but it is very formal and uncommon. Example H is a well-known saying in which he is used as an indefinite pronoun, meaning anyone or any person. Now we'll continue on how to punctuate adjective clauses. The general guidelines are as follows. Number 1, do not use commas if the adjective clause is necessary to identify the noun it modifies. Number 2, Use commas if the adjective clause simply gives additional information and is not necessary to identify the noun it modifies. Adjective clauses that do not require commas are called identifying adjective clause. Adjective clauses that require commas are called non-identifying adjective clause. Non-identifying adjective clauses are more common in writing than in speaking. In A, no commas are used. The adjective clause is necessary to identify which professor is meant. In B, commas are used. The adjective clause is not necessary to identify Professor Wilson. We already know who he is. He has a name. The adjective clause simply gives additional information. This is the guideline. Use commas as in B and C and D if an adjective clause modifies a proper noun. A proper noun begins with a capital letter. Note that a comma reflects a pause in speech. In E, if no commas are used, any possible pronoun may be used in the adjective clause. Object pronouns may be omitted. In F, when commas are necessary, the pronoun that may not be used. Only who, whom, which, whose, where, and when may be used, and object pronouns can be omitted. Now, let us compare the meaning of these two sentences. We took some children on picnic. The children who wanted to play soccer ran to an open field as soon as we arrived at the park. And we took some children on a picnic. The children who wanted to play soccer ran to an open field as soon as we arrived at the park. The others play a different game. In G, the use of commas means that all of the children wanted to play soccer and all of the children ran to an open field. The adjective clause is used only to give additional information about the children. In H, the lack of commas means that only some of the children wanted to play soccer. The adjective clause is used to identify which children ran to the open field. Now let's discuss the using of expression of quantity in adjective clause. An adjective clause may contain an expression of quantity with of, such as some of, many of, most of, none of, two of, half of, both of, and so on. The expression of quantity precedes the pronoun. And only whom, which, and whose are used in this pattern. This pattern is more common in writing than speaking. Commas are used. Now we'll continue the discussion to using which to modify a whole sentence. The pronouns that and this can refer to the idea of a whole sentence that comes before. In A, the word that refers to the whole sentence, Tom was late. Similarly, an adjective clause with which may modify the idea of a whole sentence. In B, the word which refers to the whole sentence, Tom was late. Using which to modify a whole sentence is informal and occurs most frequently in spoken English. This structure is generally not appropriate in formal writing. Whenever it is written, however, it is preceded by a comma to reflect a pause in speech. Now it's about reducing adjective clauses to adjective phrase. Now, before we continue further, let us see the difference between clause and phrase. A clause is a group of related words that contains a subject and a verb, while a phrase is a group of related words that does not contain a subject and a verb. An adjective phrase is a reduction of an adjective clause. It modifies a noun. It does not contain a subject and a verb. Examples: A and B have the same meaning. Only adjective clauses that have a subject pronoun, who, which, or that, are reduced to modifying adjective phrases. The adjective clause in C cannot be reduced to an adjective phrase. There are two ways in which an adjective clause is changed to an adjective phrase. Number one, if the adjective clause contains the be form of a verb, omit the subject pronoun and be form, as in E, F, and G. Number two, if there is no be form of a verb in the adjective clause, it is sometimes possible to omit the subject pronoun and change the verb to its ing form, as in H and I. If the adjective clause requires commas, as in J, the adjective phrase also requires comma, as in K. An adjective phrase in which a noun follows another noun, as in K, is called an appositive. This is the end of the discussion on adjective clause.